Hey, what's up guys, Pattycakes here. I've been meaning to make this video for a really long time now, and I'm glad that I finally found the time to make it happen. We're about to rank all of the current Hunter exotic armor in a tier list for PvP. These rankings are from the perspective of a player on PC using mouse and keyboard, but I'll try to make note of how some of the exotics would perform differently on console or if you're using a controller. By the way, the gameplay from this video is mostly captured from my Twitch stream. You can watch me live over at twitch.tv/pattycakespc. Alrighty, let's get started. So the first exotic that I wanted to cover is the Assassin's COWL. The exotic perk is Vanishing Execution. Arc, Solar, and Void melee final blows grant invisibility and restore a portion of health and shields. Finishers and final blows against more powerful targets increase the duration of the invisibility and the amount of health and shields restored. So this exotic used to be quite a bit better when the Arc Strider super hits would give you invisibility and your health regen back, but ever since the patch they don't do that anymore. They're still pretty useful for getting your health back on a melee hit and going invisible, however it is a bit hard to pick this over a different helmet like WORMHUSK. I'm going to put this helmet in the B tier. Our next exotic is Celestial NIGHTHAWK. The exotic perk is Hawkeye Hack. Modifies Golden Gun to fire a single high damage shot. Enemies eliminated by the shot explode and grant you super energy. This exotic is useful to one-shot an opposing super with just a body shot, and then kills with it do earn you a third of your super back. However, it is tough to recommend these when you can run something like Bottom Tree Golden Gun and get a headshot kill with your super, and then still have 2 shots left over for more kills. I'm going to put this in the F tier, it really belongs more to PvE. The next exotic is FOETRACER. The exotic perk is Relentless Tracker. Visually marks targeted enemies. Deals more damage to low health marked enemies. So the ability to track people through walls is always helpful in a game like Destiny where information is king. However, the bonus damage when people get to low health is just really not that useful in most situations. The main benefit I've seen is that it does allow you to 2-tap with Thorn at 1 resilience level higher, but that alone is probably not worth the trade-off of using a different exotic. I'm going to put these in the C tier. Alright, next on our list is GRAVITON FORFEIT. The exotic perk is Vanishing Shadow. Increases the duration of any invisibility effects. Your melee recharges faster while you're invisible. So invisibility is very strong as a hunter. You can really throw people off by getting into some interesting angles and making them unsure of exactly where you are on the map. However, the duration of invisibility isn't really that big of a deal when you can get your dodge back every 10 seconds with 100 mobility and go invisible again. I did some testing with this exotic, and using Bottom Tree Night Stalker with the GRAVITON FORFEIT only seemed to extend the invisibility timer by about 1 second, going from roughly 4.5 to 5.5 seconds of invisibility. While on the top tree, throwing your smoke bomb at your feet increased the invisibility by 2 seconds with Graviton, going from about 8 seconds to 10 seconds. And using middle tree, Way of the Wraith, gained 3 seconds of invisibility time using Graviton, going from about 9.5 to 12.5 seconds. The extra melee recharge strength while you're invisible is pretty noticeable, but when you already have a dodge that can instantly give your full melee charge back, I don't think it's really that valuable in the scheme of things. Again, I think it's hard to choose this over something like WORMHUSK that gives your health back on dodge. So I'm going to put this in the C tier, and I think that's a pretty generous ranking. I could certainly see an argument for dropping it down to D tier. Next on our list is KNUCKLEHEAD Radar. The exotic perk is Upgraded Sensor Pack. Provides radar while you're aiming. Enhances your radar resolution while crouched. In my eyes, the main benefit of KNUCKLEHEAD Radar is the ability to hardscope with your sniper rifle, which is where you continue to aim down sights for long periods of time. And while doing so, you still have access to your radar. While crouching and hardscoping, you even get that enhanced radar, which can synergize really well with perks like Firmly Planted for some extra sniper accuracy. I love exotics overall that buff your neutral game, and while KNUCKLEHEAD Radar is useful, I think it's a little bit hard to choose this over some other exotics with more powerful effects. I'm going to put this in the C tier. Speaking of more powerful effects, our next exotic is WORMHUSK Crown. The exotic perk is Burning Souls. Dodging gives a small health and shield bump. WORMHUSK absolutely dominated the Hunter PvP meta back in Season 3, to the point where it received nearly endless cries for a nerf. Now it gives a chunk of your health back instead of starting full health regen, and it seems to be a bit more balanced in that way. With the way that stats work in Armor 2.0, it's fairly easy to build up to 100 recovery, which starts your health recovery very quickly. Recovery is also one of those stats that doesn't see diminishing returns from stacking as much as possible. In fact, it actually gets stronger when you build all the way up to 100. Since WORMHUSK gives you that instant healing boost, I find I'm often able to use it in a fight where I don't have the upper hand by dodging away to cover and then using my 100 recovery to get my health back to full very quickly. Staying alive is super important in modes like Trials, and we've seen WORMHUSK make a huge comeback lately. I think this one's an easy S tier these days. Next on our list is AEON Swift. The exotic perk is AEON Energy. Dodging grants the following to nearby AEON cult allies. grenade energy to warlocks, melee energy to titans, and dodge energy to hunters. I've always wanted to see a build that made full use of the AEON set. I love the idea of group build synergy. It's actually one of my favorite things about many MMO games. I remember trying to cheese some early round supers back in Season 4 competitive when Dynamo could be activated without needing to be close to an enemy. Unfortunately, in the current sandbox, I don't think the AEON set offers enough value to justify using it over other exotics, especially when hunters can already get their dodge back so fast with 100 mobility. The value of this exotic really depends on how strong you can build it with teammates in a group. I'm going to rank these D tier, but I'd love for someone to show me some crazy group synergy build using this exotic, and give me reason to bump it up a tier. Next on our list is Khepri's Sting. The exotic perk is Touch of Venom. Punching someone with full melee energy will instantly cast Smoke Bomb. Gain True Sight while in your own Smoke Bomb effect. Your Smoke Bombs deal increased damage. So the wall hacks that you gain from your smoke grenade here are incredibly helpful, especially in modes like Trials where information is king. The extra damage that your smoke bomb does on hit is pretty noticeable as well, but it's a bit conflicting since you normally would want to use your smoke bomb for the wall hacks instead of throwing them at an enemy when you have this exotic on. You can make some really crazy plays with these, and I think it's definitely a top tier option, but it's a little bit hard for me to put them all the way up in the S tier because I do think there's just a few exotics that slightly outclass them. So I'm going to go with A tier for these. Next on our list is Liar's Handshake. The exotic perk here is Cross Counter. Using your arc melee ability or being hit by a melee attack will allow you to follow up with an extremely powerful melee counterpunch that will heal you. These are very fun in PvE, but in PvP I don't find them quite as strong as other options. They do certainly help you win a lot of melee battles since you can one-shot your opponent after taking a punch, but I do think there's a lot of other better options around. I'm going to put these C tier, although I do really enjoy using them just for fun. Next up is MECHANEER'S TRICKSLEEVES. The exotic perk is Spring-Loaded Mounting. Increased sidearm ready and reload speed. While you're critically wounded, swapping to a sidearm increases its damage. These are actually pretty fun to use. I remember seeing a build from Pattycakes a while back where he would get low health on purpose and then absolutely melt someone with a sidearm after switching to it. I think they're a cool idea, but not really that practical in most situations. I also don't really love the idea of needing to be low health in order for the perk to proc, since it's just so easy to die from a stray bullet going in your direction. I'm also not personally that into sidearms, but I know some people really love them, and this probably plays a little bit better with a controller than a mouse. I'm going to put these C tier, mostly just for the fun factor. Next up is Oathkeeper. The exotic perk is Adamantine Brace. Bow's charges can be held indefinitely. Oathkeepers, one of the most underwhelming exotics in the entire game. When these first came out in Forsaken, I had really high hopes for combining them with bows for some crazy builds, but unfortunately, the only benefit that these really provide is being able to hold your bow charges forever, and guess what? You can actually do this for free by just pressing your reload button every so often to reset the bow charge. In my book, these are an easy F tier, and a nomination for the worst hunter exotic all around. Next on our list is the Sealed AHAMKARA Grasps. The exotic perk is Nightmare Fuel. Dealing melee damage reloads your currently equipped weapon. I do really like the idea of synergizing your reload with a ranged melee, especially when you're using something like Bottom Tree Golden Gun with the weighted knives and a Monte Carlo. However, these gloves just don't really offer that much utility to warrant using in my opinion. I'm going to put these down in the D tier. Next up is Shards of GALANOR. The exotic perk is Sharp Edges. Hits and kills with Blade Barrage will return super energy after the super ends. Back in Season 4, Shards were the bee's knees. You could get most or even all of your super back by landing just a few kills, and then your Blade Barrage would instantly recharge, allowing you to continuously chain some insane kill sprees. These days, however, the energy you get back from a super is much less noticeable, and I don't really think it's worth using over other exotics. As with many other exotics that only boost your super, I think if you're going to use these, it's best to just swap to them just as you get your super, and then put something else back on after you cast your Blade Barrage. I'm going to put these in the D tier. Next up is SHINOBU'S Vow. The exotic perk is New Tricks. Improve Skip Grenade, and you gain an additional Skip Grenade charge. Skip Grenades return energy when it damages enemies. This exotic is pretty strong today, especially when paired with Skip Grenades and High Discipline stat. They work really well in particular on smaller maps like Cauldron, and especially in modes like Trials of Osiris. I do think there's a few other better options out there, but when you have a few enemies on the other team using these against you, it's going to be a really frustrating match. For that reason, I'm going to put these in the A tier. Next up is Young AHAMKARA'S Spine. The exotic perk is Wish Dragon Teeth. Increases Trip Mine Grenade duration and blast radius. ability damage grants Trip Mine grenade energy. In my mind, Trip Mines are already one of the stronger grenade options for hunters overall, especially on certain maps where you can make full use out of them, and this exotic just takes that to the next level. The extra damage throughout the length of the blast cone is really noticeable, as well as the extra health that each trip mine has. It actually takes quite a lot of damage to destroy one of these souped up trip mines when they're placed on a wall. I'm going to put this exotic in the B tier. It's a solid option, but there's a number of more powerful exotics out there to choose from. Next on our list is the GWISIN vest. The exotic perk here is Roving Assassin. Each Spectral Blades kill you make before going into stealth will restore more of your super energy. In a similar way to the Shards of Galanor, this exotic had its day back in Season 4 as one of the most broken exotics in the entire game. I probably got more hate mail from using the GWISIN vest than any other exotic combined since then. Back then, you could essentially stay in your super forever as long as you just got a kill early, and they were very overpowered. These days, however, the extra time in your super isn't nearly as beneficial, and supers in general are a lot squishier than they were in the old days. I think if you're going to use this exotic, it's another one that you just swap to right before you pop your super, and take him off again just after your super expires. And for that reason, I'm going to put him in the D tier. Next up is Lucky Raspberry. The exotic perk is Probability Matrix. Increases the chaining capabilities of arc bolt grenades, and has a chance to recharge it each time it deals damage. The full chain always recharges. Lucky Raspberry was actually one of my favorite exotics back in Destiny 1 PvP, but it's never really felt as strong in Destiny 2. I don't personally love perks that rely on RNG to proc. I like consistency in my PvP gear so that I'm in complete control of how I play. However, when this perk does do its job, it's really great to get your grenade back and you can make some pretty crazy plays. I'm going to put this C tier right in the middle of the pack. Next up is OPHIDIA SPATHE. The exotic perk is Scissor Fingers. Grants 2 knives per charge. I ran this exotic quite a bit when Bottom Tree Gunslinger changes were first made, so that you could get 2 of those weighted knives. It's still my go-to chest piece when I want to goof around with the throwing knives, but I don't really see it as a serious contender for competitive play. I think it's much more suited for just some fun knife-centric builds. I'm going to put this one in the C tier. Next up is RAIDEN FLUX. The exotic perk is Synapse Junctions. Quick successive attacks with Arc Staff increase the damage output and duration. This is a fantastic exotic for PvE, but PvP I don't think it has all that much value. It's essentially in the same camp as the GWISIN vest, where the only real utility is during your super, and supers in general are just much easier to kill than in previous seasons, so it's a little bit harder to get benefit out of this. On top of those issues, our Strider is just not the strongest super right now in my opinion, since it really struggles catching up with escaping enemies and it has some major hit detection issues. This is another one that you'd want to pop on just before you get your super and take it off afterwards. I'm going to put this one in the D tier. Next up is the brand new one, RAIJU'S Harness. The exotic perk here is Mobius Conduit. While your Whirlwind Guard super is active, guarding consumes less super energy, and you can press to deactivate Whirlwind Guard early and save some super energy. RAIJU'S is one of the more interesting exotic armor pieces added to the game recently. The ability to cut off your super after a kill or two and retain a bunch of your super energy is really powerful. You can also guard for significantly longer while blocking damage compared to not using this exotic. If you haven't seen it yet, CoolGuy did a really great video covering this exotic in detail. I'll link his video in the description for you to check out. I'm going to put this exotic in the B tier. Next up is one of my favorites, the Dragon Shadow. Its exotic perk is Wraith Metal Mail. Dodging reloads all weapons and increases both movement and weapon handling speeds for a brief time. I have a true love-hate relationship with this exotic. I think it's one of the best choices for hunters in the entire game, but it does come with a few caveats. Essentially, the way Dragon Shadow works is that when you dodge, you instantly reload all of your weapons, and then you gain an incredible amount of handling speed and improved movement for about 10 seconds. I created a handling video recently showing just how insane the Dragon Shadow buff really is. I'll link it on screen here as well as in the description. So with this exotic equipped, you can use your Gambler's Dodge option to dodge near an enemy and still get your full melee charge restored, and at the same time reload your weapons. Also, the improved weapon reload speed when you're using this exotic is amazing, it's so fun. And on top of all these benefits, the mobility buff that you get when Wraith Metal Mail is active means that you can run 50 mobility set and still get 100 effective mobility to get those lightning fast dodge cooldowns. Or you can even run just 15 mobility if you use a lightweight weapon for plus 20 mobility and a traction mod for plus 15 mobility and still have that effective 100 mobility when the Wraith Metal Mail buff is active. So with all of these wonderful traits, where does the hate part come from my love-hate relationship with this exotic? I have two major issues using Dragon Shadow. The first is that in order to gain all of the advantages of the Wraith Metal Mail buff, you have to consume your dodge. This means that you might not have your dodge back when you most need it to stay alive in a fight. In my recent Hunter movement video, I explained just how powerful having your dodge is to improve your movement. I'll link it on screen here as well as in the description if you haven't seen it yet. For me, the dodge is one of the most potent abilities for survival in your Hunter kit, and when my dodge is on cooldown, I feel really vulnerable. The second reason I do have some issue with this exotic is that I hate inconsistency in my PvP setups. The difference in feel when it comes to the reload time, weapon handling speeds, and the movement speed is so drastic when the perk is active versus inactive. I can't tell you how many times I ran around the map trying to bring my shotgun out thinking the perk is still active, and all of a sudden I realize the perk just ran out and I'm back to ordinary handling speeds and end up dying just because my shotgun didn't come out fast enough. It's really frustrating for me, and it's one of the only reasons that I tend to keep this thing in the vault. With all of that said though, I do think Dragon Shadow is a top tier Hunter exotic and it deserves to be in the S tier. Next up is the 6th Coyote. The exotic perk is double dodge. Gain a second dodge charge. This exotic is about as straightforward as it gets. You get 2 dodge charges instead of 1. With 100 mobility, the first and second dodges each take about 10 seconds to charge, so you're looking at a total of 20 seconds to get both charges. Since dodges are incredibly strong, this exotic is pretty good. I don't think it adds quite as much value as other picks, but it's really fun to use. I'm going to put this in the B tier. Next up is FOETRACER. The exotic perk is rapid cooldown. Increase grenade, melee, and dodge regeneration while sprinting. Dodging increases your sprint speed. FOETRACER are one of my personal favorite exotics for Hunter. Running around getting your dodge back in less than 10 seconds is incredibly fun, and the extra grenade and melee recharge rate is really noticeable too. I have a video where I tested FOETRACER's impact on dodge cooldown rates compared to other methods of reducing your dodge cooldown, and I'll link it on screen here as well as in the description so you can check it out. I'm going to put these in the A tier since they are very strong but just slightly outclassed by some S tier options for overall utility. Next up is the GEMINI JESTER. The exotic perk is Misdirection. Dodging disorients nearby enemies and temporarily removes their radar. GEMINI is one of the more frustrating exotics to play against in the game, especially if you face a whole team of enemies using them. However, they're more annoying like a bunch of mosquitoes than being actually threatening to play against. I see them as a good option, but outclassed by a number of other exotics. I'm going to rank them in the B tier. Next up is Lucky Pants. The exotic perk is a legally modded holster. Precision hits load 1 round to the chamber of stowed hand cannons. Hand cannons ready faster and are more accurate immediately after swapping to them. Lucky Pants are another favorite exotic of mine. The improved handling speed on the hand cannons pairs incredibly well with the last word, since Lucky Pants mitigates one of its biggest drawbacks, which is that slow handling speed. Before the nerf to the last word in Season 10, I think these would have probably been S tier for me on PC with mouse and keyboard. However, the last word is much harder to use now with a mouse, and that drops the utility of Lucky Pants for me down a peg. However, one potent combo that still works really well is to pair Lucky Pants with a bow like Le Monarch and also a hand cannon. Hitting a headshot with the bow and then quickly switching to your hand cannon with the improved accuracy is a deadly combo. I'm going to place these in the A tier for PC mouse and keyboard players, but I could easily see an argument for them being S tier for controller players. Next up is ORPHEUS Rig. The exotic perk is Uncanny Arrows. Provides ability energy for each enemy tethered by deadfall anchors. Mobius Quiver has more shots. ORPHEUS Rig is really held back by the fact that Tether is just not a great PvP super currently. Hopefully someday it will get the love it needs to be useful. The super energy you get returned on successful tether is just not that meaningful in PvP, especially since the super is in a bad state overall. And the extra shots from the Mobius Quiver just don't help that much since that version of the super isn't all that great either. I'm going to place these in the lowest rank, F tier, definitely more of a PvE exotic. Next up is the Bombardiers. The exotic perk is Parting Gift. Dodging leaves behind an explosive that detonates after a short delay, damaging enemies around it. These boots are really fun to use, and they're pretty funny to land kills with, but otherwise they don't provide a whole lot of utility. The bomb left behind after dodging deals about 120 damage maximum, and around 60 damage at the furthest range where the bomb will still hit the target. The radius of the bomb explosion isn't all that great, but if you have a really aggressive playstyle and you're right up next to enemies, you might earn some hilarious kills with these. I personally find them really fun to use, but not that strong. I'm going to put them in the middle of the pack at the C tier. And finally we have STOMP-EES. The exotic perk here is Hydraulic Boosters. increases sprint speed and slide distance, improves high jump, strafe jump, and triple jump. STOMP-EES, the bane of D2 controller players all over the world. STOMP-EES have been a top pick for Hunter PvP ever since the game launched, and they continue to be a top pick today. Movement is the true skill gap between good and great players in Destiny, and anything that improves your movement ability is likely to be very powerful. The extra sprint, slide, and jump performance improves the core fundamentals of Hunter movement and earns STOMP-EES a top spot in the S tier. They're one of my absolute favorite exotics to wear, and I find myself using either them or WORMHUSK almost all of the time. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was a pretty time-consuming one for me to put together, so I hope you learned something new. Let me know below in the comments, are there any placements that you disagree with and think should be in a different tier? If you did like this video, a thumbs up really helps my channel out. Also, let me know in the comments if you have any questions. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss my next video. And as I mentioned earlier, I do stream on Twitch a few days each week, and I'd love to chat with you over there. You can catch me while I'm live over at twitch.tv/pattycakespc. And finally, be sure to join our community Discord if you're looking for a cool place to meet some friends to play Destiny with. We have over 1,000 members in there, including players from all platforms, and it's a really fun way to meet some new people to play with. There's a link in the description to check it out. That's all for now. Catch you guys next time.